I've been thinking a lot about what I'm learning from my cat. I have a cat for the first time in my life. I've grew up having dogs, and throughout my adult life, including my married life, we had dogs. And recently, I think it's going on 2 years now, I have a cat. Her name is Phoebe. And it has been a deep learning experience for me to be with her and to watch her and to see how her nervous system is so sensitive. And it's helping me in this very moment to come to terms with my nervous system can expand, if I allow it, into a state of being that sensitive. And it has actually just recently dawned on me where the whole idea of copycat and scaredy cat and these terms that are inspired by cat behavior, that I never really paid much attention to where that came from, though. Copycat. Come here. Come on over. Here's the cat right now. Come on. Yeah. So, cats. Right. Very sensitive. If I sneeze loudly, she will leave. And my sensitivity has been, I think, awakened. I think I'm just going to speak my opinion. All of this is my opinion. The awakening has allowed just much, much more sensitivity into what's here in the present moment. And that means I can allow myself to be greatly affected by what is present in the moment. It's basically a superpower. It's like a super empathy. And it's also highly, highly vulnerable. And I want to talk about both of those. It is the feminine energy. I mean, the cat is like a pinnacle, epitome, expression of feminine energy. Very sensitive. Yeah. Also, I mean, very powerful and fierce, right? I'm not going to talk about that today because I really haven't explored it. I'm going to be talking about the sensitive side of the cat, the one that surrenders to the environment and whatever is currently present. The one that opens up and allows and then can be startled. The one that opens up and allows in her energy field and then becomes the copycat, not through, just automatically. It's so awesome to watch. And it truly is, these are new awarenesses for me. So why this is important for me is that I have become cat-like in some ways. And this has been going on for a long time, the symptoms that I'm going to be describing. But I didn't have a language for it, and it became pathologized in my family unit. And so I have been going through a like regular deconditioning, deconstruction process that every human being, adult human being, goes through when they experience the awakening process, or the awareness path. And then going through another layer of integrating the other side, which was the part that was internalized inside of me that wasn't sure that this wasn't just all crazy, as was being the label that was being put on to me. Um, like the internal battle between the part of me that knows with a G and feels it literally in my gut and has repeated experiences of what, some of these things that I'll describe, and consistent, plus now with the rising awareness around awakenings in the mainstream community. And I can even explain why I think there's so much of that happening. Um, I see myself reflected in others, and I'm so grateful for that. And yeah, that's a reason to show up in the world and not keep your ideas hidden. A reason to show up in the world and not keep your ideas hidden would be so that other people who are like you can know that they're not alone. So many of us are lonely, especially those of us who are bridging human development stages or states, both. Both. Let's talk about that. So, yeah, I believe my cat is teaching me to accept some of the most feminine, beautiful, powerful parts of me that can be experienced. I almost said achieved, which would be also a word for it, but let's go with experienced, through surrender. Getting more specific, surrender of the mind, the thinking mind or the conscious mind, to the subconscious mind, the elephant in John Haight's metaphor, surrendering to the elephant, letting the rider relax and surrendering to the elephant, and being in a state of responsiveness to the whatever energies are there in the environment, in you, that arise in you, becoming not the doer. That's one of the ways that the teachers talk about it, being not the doer. Um, Probably many of you who are watching have had the experience of being in that state through moments of transcendent moments of like, falling in love and being in those like very connected moments where everything seems to be happening in flow, or through a psych experience where the sense of self drops and there's a connected feeling to all that is, and you feel one with your environment. Like if somebody's speaking, that is a part of you. The trees are a part of you. You have great deep empathy for all of it, as it is experienced as being part of your consciousness in that moment. So I think most of us who are watching this video have had that experience. Well, there are people who live in life in a state of surrender to the flow. There are many terms for it. Like I said, it's often called being not the doer, being in samadhi, but there's like different levels of experiences of samadhi levels. So hard to talk about this stuff. I don't want to talk in hierarchy. It needs to be talked about in like qualitatively different, not hierarchically different. Because the truth is that everything's needed. It's like lock and key, like the video that I made yesterday. It's lock and key. Maybe it was Monday. So all expressions are actually needed. Some expressions are more unusual and more transpersonal, meaning they are less about the individual cell or selves, and more about, a unification. So more coming through as an individual that experiences more unification and connection. And I am one of those people. That's what I want to say. Very sensitive to, I can be, if I don't close myself off, I can be extremely sensitive to my surroundings. And like I said, it's a superpower, and it's also has made me extremely vulnerable. And I've also learned a lot through those vulnerabilities. I came into this world with this strange mix of like being this very sensitive person, but also having this, I guess, insatiably curious mind, especially around everything that you're going to hear me talking about. So, and that brought me courage to lean in and be vulnerable. And I got hurt, and I've learned a lot. Yeah, so I can be sensitive like a cat. And I believe that this vessel, this human vessel, is not unique. I mean, it is and it's not. Both are true. You're going to hear me talk about both being true a lot because it's closer to the truth, the paradox, and like living with both of those truths at once is part of the maturation process. Yeah, in order to move through this world, of course, we are making decisions. That's what brings our moments forward. And that's okay. That's the acceptance of the paradox. There's a grief in it, though. Yeah. There's a grief in it. And there's a lot of loneliness in it too. Yeah. A lot of loneliness in it, which keeps people like me, us who are watching, looking for others who express like us. So let me tell you, uh, I can express like a cat, but I can also express many, many, many other ways. And I'm looking for that person, the one who is truly understanding of the dynamic nature of human expression and awakening, and that awakening is a process, and that each one of us has, if we lean into our true, unique, whatever selves, please don't argue with me about the language here. Please, please, please be forgiving about the language here. If we can express our eros authentically in the moment, and again, it's always in the moment, right? It's one of the paradoxes that us who are here get to practice and mature around, which is that there is what's happening in the moment, which is right now, and there is also the pattern of what creates our reality over space and time. Both of those are true. If you ignore one or the other, you're not living in reality. That's tough. That's tough to accept. Both are true. Because so many of the people who have the awakening to transcendence want to live in the now. And that's been one of the things that's been taught to us. It's one of the things that we desire. And and part of what the frustration is in us is that we do know it is possible, but just not right now. Not in the place where humanity is right now. We cannot live in the now only. We're not there. It's a possibility. Oh, I, in order to protect the lifespan of this material vessel that is anchored in 3D space, we must also mind the patterns over space and time. That's for you individually, but it's also for humanity. And we are, as leaders, need to mind both. We need to mind now, and we need to mind the patterns over space and time, both. It's so lonely. Mhm. I'm smiling because my cat is eating her dry food. And that loud meow when she walked by was her telling me her dissatisfaction that I have not fed her again. She's taking care of herself. So, my awakening experience happened in an environment that was not experienced with that. The religious community that I was part of was a uh, more secular Jewish peoplehood community, and my spouse and I, our marital family, were named atheists, even though we were committed Jews. And it's not that unusual. People who know that flavor of Jewish expression. And it's largely intellectual, committed to Western thought, materialistic, in the sense of, what exists is here and can be seen, felt, tasted, touched, measured. And science is the best and most reliable way to know things. Not just that, but it's like basically almost the only way to know things. Yeah, the only way, even though we lived our lives obviously not like that. You can't live your life like that. um, and then, so I awoke there, and then I was awoke into a American spirituality, new age spirituality culture that was not the way that I was experiencing my awakening, because my awakening was an embodied awakening. I believe, I want to say that from the very start. I mean, I'll describe it more. And look, I'm using words to describe something that's an experience. So, but I mean, from the very start, my awakening experience was not necessarily mirrored back to me in many ways. I'll just go ahead and name a few things that are now becoming culturally aware. And let me say, like, okay, so my spontaneous awakening was 2018. My deepening, where I entered into like pretty deep state of samadhi, which I named later as probably being what Jeffrey Martin names as location 3 in his book called The Finders. That was 2020. And so we're now in 2026, and the culture is now understanding love and light is not real. Love and light all the time is not real. Calm is not all the time, is not real. That emotion is important, that embodiment is important, and that real lasting awakening is an embodied, integrated life. And one can tell a true awakened person through not only the way that they show up in the moment, but their patterns of behavior over space and time, and the quality of their relationships and the quality of their life. Which, I would say that for most of us, the quality of our life is largely around the quality of our relationships. That fulfilling relationships are important for fulfilling work and fulfilling, for most of us, fulfilling home life. And so if you see someone who doesn't have that, who hasn't shown themselves capable of being a good friend or a spouse, or a parent, uh, I would say there hasn't been that learning. That learning hasn't happened. So don't lean in to them for that stuff. In other words, if you care about relationship, don't go and get yourself a coach who's never been married and doesn't have kids, or is young and doesn't have a lot of experience in relationships, because there's deep, deep, deep learning to be having. Of course, it's the toughest kind of learning too, the relational learning. So yeah, so I had, and equality. I had my epiphany. My belief from the very beginning was I wasn't special. This was a human experience. No story is true. So I had all these these beliefs, or awakened beliefs, integrated before I had the awakening to the dropping of no self and feeling connected to all that is. So I already understood, no story is true, and that all stories are partial. We're never going to come up with a story that is going to be testable or falsifiable. Okay. It's just not the way it works. I'm a Georgia Tech PhD. I taught scientific methods and research and applied statistics. I taught all that shit. I go, because so many people discount me, my intellect, because I show up feminine. Okay. Yeah, so I had this deep understanding of no story is true, which I've written about, spoken about many times over on Facebook. Most of it is public. Um, and that was not reflected to me. What was reflected to me was a lot of stories, which I had to dodge, or basically I just didn't dodge them. I mostly just listened through the words. That's what I used to say. I'm listening through the words. So I can just hear the metaphor. And of course, one of the things that happens with awakening for a lot of us is that it's really easy for us to see how the wisdom traditions and the native traditions are all pointing to similar things. Metaphors. We can see the metaphors in all of our religious texts as being similar. Not the same, similar. But, the inward journey pointing to the inward, and what all the stuff that ends up being, perennial wisdom. We are all connected. We all are all unique and the same. The truth is in the paradox. Perennial wisdom. We're all in this together. We're all one, and we're all separate. Yeah, that's being pointed to in many ways. The complexity of the human being, the duality and the unity, the way one informs the other, the dialectic, polarization, the tension of opposites. It's all in there. It's all reflected over and over and over again. Different stories. And ultimately, no story is true. So that wasn't reflected to me. Mostly. There was just a few teachers that I could find. Richard Rudd was one of them. Richard Rudd of Gene Keys says that explicitly. So I had ways of like gauging who I thought was wise. That was one of them. But like I went into the psychedelic community because I was looking for people who also had the unity perspective. I went to I actually went kind of dipped my toe into 3 different communities after my awakening to try to find where I belonged. One was the transformational leadership community, which has a deep spiritual belief of unity, oneness, but wasn't trauma informed. The mindfulness community. So I joined a rigorous training through Search Inside Yourself that was a year long. And it deeply affected me and deeply informed me and educated me and helped me speak to these experiences and teach to these experiences in a way that was helpful in my coaching because I was already executive leadership coaching. And I was helping to bring mindfulness and awareness tools for, emotional regulation, nervous system regulation to my clients. And that was wonderful. But it goes so much deeper than that. Yeah. Yeah. So much deeper than that. So that was great. But what was it? People were very, very cautious in those containers. Nobody wanted to be vulnerable and really open up about the big questions and the experiences that we were having, because the experiences are wow. So, and none of us were really sharing that. And I mean, they intentionally hooked me up with a woman who was awakening and had a Kundalini awakening. And her experience was much more physical than mine. And she was farther along on the path in her integration than me. And that was very, very wonderful. So I'm really grateful for that. But I could have really used some more full frontal, what's happening for you and how are you coping with that? But how could they know? How could I know? No one knows. No one knows. No one really knows this. I think Jeffrey Martin really is the one that is the only one I've really seen that has investigated people who've had experiences like me deeply. And that guy, he was in the Epstein files. And he is. All of us are unintegrated. That's what I was trying to say. Each one of us, if we can be our unique selves and follow our unique arrows, which means that we, have life force energy that are driving us for something. Each one of us has our own thing. What is it? It can be anything. It can be anything, anything, anything. If we can lean into that, we bring that nuance and that awakening and that awareness, that nuanced ability to look at something from all sides. And from an embodied perspective, which AI does not have yet, and create wisdom out of it. But we have to be able to be with others so we can combine those, because we can, everybody's can be very narrow in what they can be truly, truly, truly nuanced about and awake about and aware about. And as we know, in our awakening and awareness, we can go on forever. You can go down and down and down and down into microscopic knowing and more and more and more granular knowing forever, forever. So, but what we want to do is we don't want to do that alone, because then you can spin off into, well, I don't want to put a value judgment on that. Maybe some people do want to spin off into their own like private experience that they are not capable of speaking to and sharing with other human beings. But I don't. I would very much like to not spin off into a private experience where I am no longer capable of connecting deeply with real human beings. Um, and I mean, I have very authentic and deep friendships with women who will listen and deeply understand, because they are also where I am at in this deep, feminine, embodied awakening. So I have mirrors, and I have connection, and I have camaraderie and nurturing from other women, friends, and the masculine energy that I also need and desire. Uh, I'm cultivating it inside myself, yes, and I don't want to do. I don't want to do it alone. I don't. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to. It's a desire. And as I sit here and I tell the truth of that, it's like a part of me is like, well, you might have to. I'm like, okay, fine. And a part of me is like, you don't. It's too much to ask. It's too much to ask universe, God, all that is, me, myself, given, the circumstances that I'm in, that I would find a partner, a male partner, who is also here, where you are willing to deeply understand paradox of living here now and being able to be with me really now, so I can actually drop my protection and allow myself to be affected by your energy and take responsibility for our co-created patterns over space and time. because my energy will affect you. You can't just be with me casually. And I mean, I think men know that. But even if a man believes that he's ready to be serious, he's not necessarily ready for that, because that's a developmental understanding. It's a freaking developmental understanding, which means that a person would need to go through the stages of not this. You've had to have gone through the stages where you this is good, where you lived only in remembering self, which is consensus consciousness, and you've forgotten how to be here now. You're only here. Okay, so many of you watching this will know that clearly. You're only here. Okay. Then you had an awakening to presence and now you're able to be in the now. And then where I find many men get lost is they think here, being now, is where they're supposed to stay. And there's another step where you both recognize, yeah, you get to be here now, and your patterns matter over space and time. Okay, I gotta go. And this wasn't enough about my cat. Apologies.